12:31, and I am calling this meeting to order of the BAWSCA, Bay Area Water and Supply Conservation Agency Board Policy Committee. And it is October 9th, and welcome everyone. I'm so glad to have you here. We'll have a roll call.
Chair Hardy.
Present.
Vice Chair Ragsdale.
Present.
Chambers.
Present.
Dorr. She just stepped out for a moment. Duncan.
Present.
Director Pierce.
Here.
Thank you. Schneider.
Present.
Vela.
Here.
And Zichterman. Zichterman is absent. And you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. My comment is recognize that you will need to turn on your own microphone when you go to speak. Please remember to do so. And if you want to speak, remember to tip your name tag. That helps me a lot. And when I forget to ask for public input, Counsel always pokes me, and that works. Not a problem. I want everyone to realize that we are live streaming, but it is just an output. We cannot take any input from the public who is not within the room. And Director Pierce, who is she's on her own phone situation. And then we do have Director Zichterman, who is on vacation and not with us today. But other than that, we're ready to go. I have the consent calendar. Do I have any questions, comments, or a motion for the consent calendar? Director Chambers.
I
Chair
move
Chambers.
approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And that's from Ann. Wonderful. Any comments? Since we will need to do a roll call vote because we do have someone not present.
Hardy.
Yes.
Ragsdale.
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes.
Dorr. Duncan.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Vela.
Yes.
Zichterman. The motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. We're up to, I will make a comment also. We have this room until 6, but we do have some scheduling issues, and we would like to finish by 4:30 so that Nicole can get to her other meeting down in Palo Alto. So I want everyone to be cognizant of our time constraints, and we have a lot of important things on the agenda. So we just need to focus. Thank you so much. All right, public comments. This is for members of the public who are in the room who would like to address us on something within our purview, but not on the agenda. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak? I do not see anyone. Then we will go on. Oh, that's right. Barbara, is there anyone with you at this time, and would they like to speak?
No, there is no one here, and they would not like to speak.
Isn't that a double negative? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair Chambers, for reminding me of that. Okay, we'll go to action items on number 5, adoption of resolution approving the extension of the 2021 Amended and Restated Tier 2 Drought Response Implementation. I believe this is Danielle's. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Closer. Is it on? Yes. It's on. Okay. Great. Good afternoon, directors. We've been talking about the Tier 2 for quite a while, so this will all be recap, but we also, it's important to provide the background. So the Tier 2, shortages on the regional water system are governed by 2 plans. The Tier 1 plan allocates water between the San Francisco retail customers and then the wholesale customers collectively. The Tier 2 plan is the method for allocating water among the 26 wholesale customers. The WSA provides that San Francisco will honor the allocations that are agreed to unanimously by the wholesale customers, And as a reminder, these two plans apply during shortages caused by drought up to 20%. So just a little timeline of where we have been and where we're going. This current plan was adopted in 2011. It was set to expire in 2018 to align with different decisions that the San Francisco Public Utilities Committee was expected to make. There were other things going on at the time, including water efficiency legislation that we weren't sure how they were going to impact the agencies. And so they asked us to wait on creating an update to the Tier 2 plan. So since then, the BAWSCA board has adopted or extended the existing Tier 2 plan on a one-year basis every year. In 2022, the WMR decided they were ready to begin updating the Tier 2 plan, and we initiated that at the beginning of 2022. And as we've shared with you before, we are thrilled to announce that they have come to an agreement on an updated plan. We have some agencies who are scheduled to begin adopting this plan in December, but we generally estimate it will take about 6 months to adopt. So in the meantime, what we're bringing to you today is an extension of the existing Tier 2 plan so that we have one in place in the event that San Francisco declares a shortage. So, like I said, the Tier 2 plan update has been finalized. What they have agreed to is not just an updated Tier 2 plan, but also an amendment to the WSA that includes two main pieces. One is updating elements of the Tier 1 plan, and another is addressing the minimum purchase challenges. So we are working with the agencies to finalize all those pieces and working with Hanson Bridget to develop the adoption materials. Like I said before, it's expected to take about 6 months. And so this action that you guys are taking, there's new language that would have the updated plan supersede what you pass as a board when it's unanimously adopted. So the recommended action is that the board adopt resolution 2024-03, extending the term of the 2021 amended and restated Tier 2 plan through December 31st, 2025. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Danielle. It's been a heavy lift, and we appreciate all your work. It's so easy to get 26 agencies to agree with each other. That word unanimous becomes frightening. So are there any questions about the recommendation to extend the term for the amended and restated Tier 2 plan? I do not see any cards. Is there anyone in the public? I do not see any. Do I have a motion?
Karen, I have my hand up.
Oh, I apologize. Yes. Thank you, Barbara, for saying something. Now I see it. Barbara, please go ahead.
Thank you. Danielle, I just want to clarify, because this has been a really heavy lift. Am I correct in understanding that the agencies have reached agreement not only on the Tier 2, but also on the WSA amendments, or are some of them underway? Can you clarify that a little bit for me, please?
Yes, I'll answer that, Director Pierce. So they have all agreed to the parts of the Tier 2 plan, and then on the minimum purchase portion, which is part of the overall deal, there's a majority in agreement. We have one agency that remains discussing some details, and we're hopeful that we will get that resolved very promptly.
Okay, and then I'm hoping we won't need to go there, but I'll ask the question anyway. The agencies would need to approve unanimously. If the board is forced to vote on this, does the board need to reach unanimity as well?
So the interesting piece of that is the BAWSCA board can act on the Tier 2 plan only, right? Which is the part that has an agreement among the agencies. And I would put an asterisk next to that, because as part of agreeing to the Tier 2 plan, which has some increased impacts to some of the minimum purchase agencies, they have said, look, we can accept these increased impacts during drought if the proposals for the minimum purchase become part of the amendment. The BAWSCA board does not have the authority to adopt that minimum purchase piece. That is solely contained within the water supply agreement. And it also, we understand it needs to be unanimous. So there's kind of a bifurcation of authorities there.
Okay, thank you very much, and it clarifies why water is so complicated.
It is.
Nothing important is easy. Thank you. I appreciate that. With that, Director Pierce's hand is down now. Do I have a motion?
This is Barbara, and I'd be happy to make the motion as proposed in the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Ragsdale.
And that was, Director Ragsdale. Thank you. Director Pierce, I appreciate that. Trying to be more formal since we're online. Do I have any discussion on the motion? Anyone in the public? Do not see any. Call for a vote.
Hardy?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
One question though.
I'm sorry.
Motion says that the board adopt resolution. We're not going to adopt. We recommend adoption. True?
Yes.
Oh, very
And
good.
let me just double check. The recommendation in the agenda packet says that.
Yeah,
So
okay.
the recommendation is that the Board Policy Committee recommend board adoption of Resolution 2024-03, extending the term of the 2021. Good
'cause-
catch. So
Yes, because we are recommending this to the rest of the board. I appreciate that for the
Okay.
clarification. Okay,
okay.
keep going.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes,
Schneider,
Yes.
Vella,
Yes.
and Zichterman, and the motion passes.
Thank you so much. All right, moving right along, because we have so much fun to do. 5B is the annual consideration of BAWSCA's investment policy, which was attached, and we have Christina Tang here to explain some of this, and then she'll give us her recommendation. Please, Christina.
Deposits in excess of the FDIC limit be collateralized with securities in accordance with the state law, and to eliminate the maximum deposit limit of the 250,000. So BAWSCA's legal counsel have confirmed the statement of the policy to reflect the language consistent with the state law. And please note that we include two sections in this policy, one section for the agency fund, the other section for the bond funds. It's because most agency only have their investment policy govern their operating fund, not the bond funds. In terms of the bond funds, our investment policy does indicate the permitted investments for our bond proceeds held at the trustee Bank of New York. And the current permitted investments are federal securities, U.S. agency securities, money market mutual funds, and CD. Based on the recent review of BAWSCA circumstances, BAWSCA believes current permitted investments are consistent with our risk tolerance and the primary objectives of the investments. Therefore, no changes to the policy are recommended at this time for both the agency funds and the bond funds. So among the bond proceeds held at the trustee, there is a bucket of fund labeled as stabilization fund. And these are the funds serve as a reserve to cover the debt service payment in case of shortfalls in the bond surcharge collection. And this slide provides an overview of the investment strategy for the stabilization fund. So, but I just want to note, this is not part of the policy, but has been evaluated each year during the policy review. As you all know, the Federal Reserve has recently started reducing the interest rates from their highest level in the past 20 years. But the rates in the 0 to 5 year range still remain elevated since the beginning of 2022. And the good news is Our investment strategy for the specialization fund still performing very well. It continues to provide important yield curve diversification against both market price and reinvestment risks. And as of October 8th, the total bond funds held by the trustee are $17,132,713 that are comprised of $5 million bond surcharges in the money market fund that are collected from the member agencies to pay for the biannual debt service payment, and $12.1 million civilization fund invested in the U.S. Treasury securities. And based on the recent evaluation, BAWSCA believes that the current 0 to 5 year laddered maturity investment strategy remains appropriate. And the next slide will illustrate how exactly this investment strategy works. So this is the chart represents our portfolio maturity distribution as of yesterday, October 8th. So our funds are invested in treasury securities maturing in 6 months intervals to coincide with our debt service payment date throughout the next 5 years. So in light of the recent market development, BAWSCA and its investment advisor believes that the current strategy remains appropriate, as such longer maturity strategies has historically been providing greater investment returns over time while protecting agency against the reinvestment risks. So the recommendation is for the committee to recommend the board to reaffirm the current statement of investment policy as presented in the attachment to the staff report. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Christina. I will say that your hard work has saved us money, and staying the course sounds like a really good recommendation. Are there any questions from any board members? You're all out there. I can hear you breathing. You're just so all quiet today. Director Ragsdale, please.
Not a question, just a comment from your report. I really appreciated the detailed history and what the board did every year as someone who wasn't on the board then. So thank you for that.
In so many ways, I wish everyone was as careful with their money in all agencies. I do not see any more comments or questions. Anyone from the public? I do not see any. Do I have a motion then to for the recommendation for the board, for the committee to recommend to the board the reaffirmation of our current policy? Tom, Director Chambers.
I move approval of the recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, and Louise seconds that. Do I have any comments on the motion? I do not see any. Any comments from the public on the motion? Do not see any. All right, we'll call for a vote.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes.
thank you, Schneider,
Yes.
Vella,
Yes.
and Zichterman. And the motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. A lot of action today. All right. Yes. So we're up to 5C. It's and Allison will have the next 4 different items, and there's some connections between them and also some differences. So I'll let her take that away.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. The next 3 items are related to new positions and making sure that our publicly available pay schedules are up to the standard that CalPERS requires. And these items also are very much statutorily driven, so you will see in the agenda packet the language is rather detailed and formal, and that is because these are statutory driven items and we just have to make sure we follow it exactly the way that the statute's written and that in particular PERS would like to see. And then when we get to the board member meeting compensation, it's the same issue there, that the statute drives some of the procedures that are included in the packet. So first item is the new transition manager position. So this position concept came out of the ad hoc recruitment committee work when they were planning out the recruitment and when the new appointed CEO, Thomas Magel, would start, and how long Nicole Sandkulla could stay on to make sure there's a smooth transition. And so as part of that committee work and also working with Ms. Sandkulla and Mr. Smagel about what their availability was over the next few months, the idea was hatched to have this 1 month full-time transition manager position for CEO Sandkulla to make sure she was working full-time in the office in this position to make sure that the transition was very smooth. So she will still be a full-time employee of BAWSCA, will receive the same benefits and the same compensation for that 1 month period. And this will make sure that they are working hand in hand on the BPC meeting in December and the budget revision that usually happens in the winter. So that is the background on this position. This is the organization chart that the expectation is there's this 1 month period of transition manager, and then the next item is special counsel to the CEO, which will be very much an ad hoc consulting position as needed. And I'll speak more about that for the next item. So the recommended action is that the BPC recommends to the board to create this transition manager position, approve adding it to the pay scale for 24-25, and appointing Ms. Sandkulla to that position effective December 1st, 2024. And I can take questions.
Thank you. And I do have one question for myself, and then I have another director. So my understanding is this was similar to what was done
Yes.
when Ms. Sandkulla was brought on 10 years ago.
So when Ms. Sandkulla was appointed to be the next CEO, she was working at BAWSCA with Mr. Jensen, and so they did transition in real time while they were both still at the agency, and then his final month as CEO, as he was retiring, was on vacation, so he was available to consult. But then the next item coming next is the special counsel to the CEO, and that was something for sure that the board created for Mr. Jensen to be available and be paid for time consulting as needed with the CEO on ongoing projects or ongoing negotiations.
So if I understand right, you're saying we cannot have two people in the same
Correct.
position.
Right.
And that is the concern.
That is correct. We do not want to have two CEOs at any time. That public agencies can't do that. So you need to have some sort of position to, if you have a handoff that is more than just a single day, you need to have a position for that.
Director Schneider.
Thank you. I completely support this. Ms. Shute, when you mentioned the duties, I just reminded me of the other things that Ms. Sandkulla did during the bad rainstorms, which was feet on the ground, out making sure of that. And since we don't really know what this winter's going to be like, the weather reports keep going, I'm sure that's part of it, and I'm sure you would be there. But that, for all of us, I think is very important to make sure that all of our people downstream are safe on that. And I very much appreciate what you did. I can't remember if that was the winter of 21-22 or 22-23.
I believe it's 21-22.
So when I was
Right.
mayor.
Yeah.
And it was a huge thing in my city because we flooded badly and we lost people in that year. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Director Chambers.
I'd like to thank staff for putting this together. I know that the ad hoc committee did talk about the transition where we had both people available, but obviously they couldn't be in the same position at the same time. We talked about overlaps of actually November. Initially, the new CEO was supposed to come on sometime in November. So I'm glad that we firmed this up so this December thing works really well. thank you for putting this together.
Thank you. The reality is, not only are we changing somebody at the top of the heap, but it's a small agency. That's 1/9 of our of our employees, and that can be major. So I appreciate that. I do not see any other questions. Oh, sorry, Director Duncan. Thank
So
you.
I just wanted to say I fully support this, and it's the opposite of when you do things wrong, you toss the keys, don't mess up. Here's the keys to the agency, don't mess up, and this is the right way to approach it.
Thank you. Yes, and I have seen that where have fun, don't burn the place down, and I'm out of here. And that's not a good way to run an agency. Director Vila.
Also, I wanted to add that, yes, this was discussed with the ad hoc committee, and we really raced towards this deadline and the time that we had. But this is something that has been done even by other smaller agencies. The Mid-Peninsula Water District did it very successfully, and that will lead to as much as possible to the seamless transition of a very, key position in an organization. So, obviously I support this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Do I have any comments from the public? Do not see any. Then I'll go back to the board. Do I have a motion? Director Schneider.
Motion to approve creation of transition manager position, approve the transition manager position to BAWSCA's publicly available pay schedule for fiscal year 24-5, and to appoint Ms. Sandkulla to the transition manager position effective December 1st, 2024.
Wonderful. And Director Vila.
I second whatever Director Snyder said.
I'm glad she got it out then. Wonderful.
She did the heavy lifting.
Do I have any comments on the motion? Do I have any from the public? Then we'll take a vote.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes,
Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Pierce,
Absolutely.
thank you, Schneider,
Yes.
Vela,
Yes.
and Zichterman, and the motion passes.
Wonderful. And I will say for those that may be chatting with people about this beforehand, you can help explain some of the thinking process of what went on. We'd love to see everyone on board for this. Thank you so much. All right, we'll go on to 5D, resolution approving the temporary appointment of Nicole Sandkulla as special counsel to the CEO and general manager, and adoption of the pay schedule for the special counsel position.
Yes. So this is the second item in these suite of three. And this is something also considered by the ad hoc committee, but this is something that for sure the BAWSCA board approved with the Art Jensen to Nicole Sandkulla transition. So she will be retiring, Ms. Sandkulla, on December 30th, 2024. But there are projects that are ongoing, and Mr. Smagel, not being in-house at BAWSCA, has information that he will still need to glean from Ms. Sandkulla. And so we wanted to create a position that would be available on an ad hoc, as-needed basis for him to be able to call on her services, as she did with Mr. Jensen. Because she is a retired annuitant, there are extremely detailed requirements required by CalPERS. And I have some of the bullet points up there, particularly the top one, which you see a lot in the public sector when people are trying to do these positions, that you cannot keep your retirement going and work more than 960 hours per fiscal year. The intention with this is extremely ad hoc. She has no intention of coming even close to that, but it is very good to have him be able to call on her and for her to be paid for her time rather than for her to just give her time, which we know she would willingly give in any event. So the other elements are that she has an hourly rate that's consistent with the range for her most closely connected position, which is as CEO. There is no other benefit or compensation that she'll be receiving. And there are additional findings in the resolution in front of you to make sure that the board is very clear to CalPERS that they do want to hire her immediately upon retirement. In general, retired annuitants need to have a 6-month break before coming back to an agency to fill a position, because CalPERS doesn't want retired people taking up jobs from people that would be paying into CalPERS. So, but if a person is filling a critical need and the board makes that finding, then it is acceptable. And we did this same thing with Mr. Jensen, and it was acceptable to CalPERS and worked with his retirement and with their rules. So that is what is behind our findings. And then the recommended action is to recommend that the board adopt this resolution, and it has to be a resolution. It's very formal. Approving her appointment to this position and adopting this pay scale, which is based on her CEO compensation, and then making the findings in support of such appointment. And then once this approval is in place, we will add this to the pay schedule that will be going up on the website, which is the third item that will be coming before you. So I'm available for questions.
Thank you. So I want to make certain it's really clear. So to make this within 6 months, we have to, that one of the findings is that there is a special need, and that's in this resolution.
Yes.
And we've left the time frame open-ended.
It's a 24-month time frame in the resolution.
Okay.
So that is something that we used with Mr. Jensen. And in fact, in his case, there were ongoing negotiations with San Francisco, and so that was extended beyond that window until those negotiations concluded. So at this point, the expectation is this would be short-term, but we don't know if there's some issue that drags on that her experience would be critical to provide consultation. But for now, your action is 24 months.
Because we've never seen a legal thing go more than 2 years. Just kidding. Wonderful. Thank you for that explanation. Do we have any questions from any directors? Do not see any. Do we have any from the public? Do not see any. Okay. I'll go back to the board. Do we have a recommendation? Do we have a motion? Director Chambers.
I move that we temporarily appoint Nicole Sandkulla as special counsel and CEO, really effective upon her retirement, which is really the next day, January 1st, 2025.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm
Along
happy
with
to
the
second
findings
that.
and, yes, Barbara, please.
I'm happy to second that, Karen.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And I have to ask each time, because is there anyone in the room with you?
No.
Over 8.
No, there is not.
Okay. I have to ask that. I should have said over 18. Because I know you're over 18, but anyone else? Thank
No
you.
one else under or over 18 is here today,
Thank you so
other
much.
than myself.
Thank you so much, Director Pierce. Okay, any questions on the motion? Anything from the public? Yes, please. As a member of the public, please come up. Identify yourself and turn on the light.
Sorry, Tom Smigel, member of the public. You're recommending that the board approve that.
Yes.
You're not, I think the wording was, just to be clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's right here, resolution approving the temporary. You're right, it says, I remember somewhere where it said we're suggesting to the board, we're recommending to the board. Thank you so much. That's really clear. We don't have those kind of powers. We just recommend. Okay. Well, roll call, please.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yes,
Schneider,
Yes.
Vella,
Yes.
and Sichterman. And the motion passes.
Thank you so much. We'll come up to 5E, adoption of BAWSCA retroactive pay schedules. This is where we have even more legal realities. So take that
Yes.
away, Ms. Schutte.
So this is the final in this suite of 3 related to personnel and compensation. BAWSCA has had a pay schedule on their website for the last few years, but when Ms. Sandkulla was working on her retirement with PERS, it came to light that PERS wanted a separate format for that schedule on the website. And so we are meeting PERS requirements exactly the way that they want them. And since the last retirement at BAWSCA was 13 years ago, we do not actually interact with PERS very often. So, so you are simply approving existing pay schedules from previous years, and also approving the updated pay schedule for this year that has these new positions that were just discussed before. So this, for those of you that are not already very familiar with CalPERS, they have a lot of very strict requirements, and it's really best practice to follow them to the letter, because they can be challenging to work with and receive any kind of variances. And so that is the basis for these this action. And you will see the schedules completely line up with what's been approved in the budget every single year, and the top step that has been discussed and approved by the board every single year. So we will, moving forward, be more clear when we adopt the annual work plan and budget that this pay schedule is part of that. And then again, it will be updated twice, because the work plan and budget deals with the employee's pay schedule starting on the fiscal year basis, and then the CEO is generally evaluated by September 30th. And so then there's a new pay schedule for the CEO in September. So, okay. So our recommended action is that the Board Policy Committee recommend that the board adopt these pay schedules spanning from 2020 to the present, and they are attached in the packet.
Yes. And I will concur, having worked at my city with CalPERS. Don't cross them. It's not pretty. So I appreciate our council working with them and recognizing that it's been so many years since someone was retired that this is a cleanup situation. Are there any questions? Yes, Director Ragsdale, please.
Not a question, just a suggestion for when the packet goes to the board, to maybe say several times in several different ways that this isn't, we're not paying people retroactively. These have been approved, and I know it says it right there, and was last adopted by the board of directors. Maybe put that in bold for someone who's not reading quite as carefully, and maybe put that in the summary as well, that these were already approved. This isn't going to be a cost or retroactive payment. Just clarification for CalPERS.
Understood. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I was helping with some traffic during a football game at the high school, and I decided that there are so many people who think the sign that says no entrance, that there was an invisible part that said except for me. So I think calling out something very carefully is not a bad idea, and especially because the term retroactive pay puts up all of our concerns and shackles, because this is public money and we are guardians of that. So I appreciate that being very clear that this is the scheduling, and this is legally handling things with an agency that I would never suggest that you cross. Thank you. Are there any other questions or clarifications on that? Anyone in the public? Okay. Do I have a motion?
The attorney read it. Do you want me to read the whole motion?
No,
We're
you
being
can
trained
just-
to make sure we read the whole motions every time. So, motion to approve.
Thank you so much. So I have a motion to approve the recommended policy. Director
Second.
Chambers.
Second.
And he seconds that. Thank you. Do you have any comments on the motion? I do not see any from the public. Then I will call the question.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Chambers,
Yes.
Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Pierce,
Yeah,
Schneider,
Yes.
Vella,
Yes.
and Zichterman. Motion passes.
Thank you. We go this fast. I won't have to worry about the 4:30. And we'll get through everything. That'll be wonderful. So 5F, this may be where it slows down. 5F, adoption of ordinance to increase board member compensation, because this has not been debated at all, and everyone's completely on the same page. Oh, that's right, we're not. So let's understand where we're at on this. Ms. Schutte.
Certainly. Okay, so over the last year and maybe year and a half, the board has considered evaluating whether or not to increase board member compensation. And at the September meeting, I received direction to move the days of service compensation up to $200. And you will see in the packet that there's a lot of attachments to that ordinance, because according, again, to the statute, government code, there's a lot of required transparency around board member compensation. So we will, if this is approved, we will need to have a public hearing at the November meeting, and BAWSCA staff will notice it in a newspaper of general circulation 2 times before the meeting, and then my recommendation is to publish a summary of the new ordinance in a newspaper afterwards. Just, it's a lot of formality, but that is the direction from the statute going back, a very long time because of transparency concerns around board member pay. So what I gleaned from the September meeting was that there was a majority that wanted to increase to $200 per day of service, which is when we did the simple math of calculating the escalation since 2004. That was the top step. And not to change the days of service per month, which is 4, but to change the stipend per day of service. Generally, that is a meeting, a board meeting or a BPC meeting, but at the direction of essentially the chair, there may be additional business that board members participate in which they could earn compensation of $200. So we are, let me get, I guess, the action item. We are asking that the board policy committee, actually, we want the board policy committee to direct staff to effectuate a noticed public hearing so that the board can have the hearing at the November 21st board meeting to adopt Ordinance 2024-01, and that will increase compensation to $200 a day for attending meetings and for each day of service by request of the board. And we also have added a provision in the ordinance to review board member compensation every 5 years, which staff will implement.
Wonderful, thank you. I know I was making some notes because it's very clear that if you have more than one meeting that day, it's just for a day. And was there a reason for changing stipend to compensation?
The CEO and I, just on reflecting on this in preparing for the meeting, we just wanted to make it clear that if you had more, this is from the ordinance, the compensation is for the day of service regardless of how many meetings you have in that one day. So if you had 3 meetings in one day, you would not get $600. It's $200 per day of service. Generally, it's a meeting stipend, but when you look at the ordinance language, it's days of service.
Thank you. And that is for just policy board meetings or our regular meeting. Does that qualify for any like ad hoc committees or any conference someone is sent to?
So the ordinance specifies, I think at this point, we just have the meetings included, right, CEO Sandkulla? But
Meetings included or things attended at the request of the chair, I
right,
believe.
so the
way-
chair would say, could say, you
Yes.
know, I would like you, board member X, to attend Aqua, in which case you would be able to get days of service
Would
for
that be
Aqua.
chair or the board?
Has to be the chair. It's
Yeah.
actually,
Not-
The chair is acting for the
the
board.
chair
Okay.
acts for the board, yeah.
So
So
the-
it's, because the board meets every other month,
Yeah.
right? So generally, the board chair is the one that does those types of activities. So in the past, it's been, if the chair is unable to do it, the chair will designate someone to do it and
Okay.
make that request.
And the chair leads the board per the adopted rules of the board. So to make management of board activities effective.
Okay.
And my understanding is all this notification is required by law because we're essentially voting ourselves a raise.
Correct.
To be so crass, please.
And if I might, just to make it very, very clear, these changes you see on the recommended action are, you know, changes from the written version that you have in your memo. Because upon further reflection, legal counsel and I decided some greater clarification was needed.
Wonderful. Any questions from any directors? Director Schneider, please.
Thank you, and again, I'm okay with this. During the board meeting, there was a lot of discussion about COLA. I think I suggested, since my city has just been through this, and I was incorrect in stating that we built in COLA for that. And it does require us to go every year back for this. So I think the compromise that we met at the board meeting was looking at this every 5 years, and I support that compromise. But I do, kind of following Director Ragsdale's comment on the other one, let's make sure for the staff presentation to the board that we put the COLA discussion, I don't want to say at rest, but put it in context. My guess is, it was just very complicated for my city to figure out how to do an annual COLA. And I think the other part of the discussion was to leave that out because we don't know how inflation would run. And if there's a certain couple of periods where you're in 25% inflation multiple years in a row on that. So I like what we've got, but I just would be prepared in the staff presentation. I know a director who had originally made that motion to include COLA. I was in support of that. I do understand its complications.
Thank you. Director Ragsdale, please.
So for the definition of meetings, so that wouldn't be ad hoc, or should we clarify what the definition of meetings is? If it's just BPC and full board, does that need to be?
The chair asked people to be on the ad hoc committee, and meeting service on the ad hoc committee is absolutely compensable under the
Okay.
current ordinance.
Okay, so the word, I just didn't know if we needed a clarification of the word meeting.
Oh, meeting in general is a legally noticed government meeting. The ad hoc committee meeting is not that, but it does meet a day of service
Okay,
under the
through
ordinance.
Through the board, okay.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, I'll take a look at that to see if we need more clarity.
And then, for instance, like when Nicole so graciously met with new board members, starting when we were new, to give background. I mean, I don't feel like I needed to be paid, and that wasn't at the direction of the then chair, but just so it's clear, so people know not to expect.
So, I mean,
Payment for that.
makes me think maybe we bring back for the board the reimbursement policy, because that does address with more flexibility submission of cost reimbursement for the business of BAWSCA.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that those meetings are at the service of the board, and you could both get the stipend and also if you had mileage or other kinds of things under the two policies. But I think I'll bring it back as another attachment so that people see both the meeting compensation and the reimbursement and see how they complement each other. It is true that board members in general have not taken advantage of all the compensation available to them. But that does not mean it's not permitted.
Yep.
Nicole, please.
Yeah, if I might add on that, and this does raise a question, for example, with the ad hoc committee, right? The natural payment for attendance and service is for the board meetings and the BPC meetings. That happens naturally. Any other attendance is generally at the request of a board member, because it's just an unusual situation, I guess. And that may be something we need to reconsider, but that's how it's happened to date.
Thank you.
And-
Director Chambers.
Oh,
Sorry,
just,
please, Director Ragsdale, please.
So the
follow-up.
the second question I had is with regard to the every 5 years, and I'm not suggesting we do, but do we want to specify first quarter or every January or some regularity with that every 5 years, or just leave it be as every 5 years?
My suggestion, given the mechanics that are needed for this thing, that you give some flexibility to the staff to fit the mechanics within the schedule of an otherwise busy calendar, and give us some time to think. So I think that would be better. And then it would just be put on the regular policy calendar so we can think about it. Kind of like the policy that you just adopted. Similar, it has to be reviewed every year, but it will shift in months. If you have like a very full calendar, we move it to the following meeting. I think that would be easier for the staff.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. And if I remember right, there is a limitation, was it 3.5% per year that?
5%.
5%. Okay.
5%.
5% was the maximum per year, and then we would revisit it after 5 years and look at it. Director Chambers, please.
Okay, one, I'd like to thank staff and council for putting this recommended action together. I think it's exactly what the board wanted to have done. So I fully recommend that we follow or adopt the recommended action. I do want to say that if we do vote for doing this action, it doesn't mean that's how we're going to vote at the general meeting next month. I took the AG's course on ethics, and this is public money, and we should really spend it how we think it's going to be give maximum benefit to the public. And so think about how you're going to vote. I hope all the members of the board will think of how they're going to vote, and I look forward to presenting this at our next board meeting.
Thank you so much. Director Schneider.
Thank you. Again, building on Director Ragsdale, of the extra meetings that I've gone to, it was the orientation in Foster City, and it was the harassment training at the BAWSCA office. I'm fine not getting paid for those. I just think we should clarify what is and what isn't. So building on Director Ragsdale, let's just make it really simple and set expectations.
I appreciate that. I think the concern is we have a certain policy, and it is for days of service. And so that gets, I'm not certain we have the ability to change that. We can make a recommendation, if I'm correct. And I will just, to remind everybody, I voted against the payment change personally, because I don't feel like you can pay somebody to care enough.
Yeah, we can have further discussions with the chair about I guess the activities and the meetings that the chair wants to be really clear about. I would be careful in the ordinance about getting too much into the weeds, because this this is a R&D type agency where we aren't having repeated meetings and days of service generally by the board. So I will reflect on these comments and see if there are additional changes that can be made. But this, this is also coming from statutory language about days of service and meetings, at the request of the board. I mean, that is very much in the statute and in these compensation provisions in the government code. So that the code isn't going into, well, this kind of meeting works, but that kind of meeting isn't. And agencies have different practices. So some agencies would say, your ethics training is on your own time and your own dime. And other agencies would say, if you're coming to the agency to do something to support the agency, we will compensate you. So there's different practices.
Thank you. Director Vila.
Okay, so for the established meeting, there probably will be little or no question, but for those that aren't, shouldn't there be like a pre-approval?
So the reimbursement
to.
policy is really clear on that, and so that's why I want to bring it back for reimbursing costs. Yeah.
Correct.
So that, we need that, I think, to help illustrate this point to the board members.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that
I'll
there will
attach
not
it.
be,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. So if I understand this correctly, what we're being asked to look at is our recommendation that we follow the policy of noticing everything publicly for giving ourselves a raise, so that when it comes back to the board, that all those requirements have been met.
Correct.
And then each director can make a decision at that point that a recommendation here is not to recommend that you get that, but that we follow the
Yes.
accepted and
Right.
legal requirements.
So we can have a noticed public hearing on November 21st.
And so, if I understand right, that will go out before that
Correct.
during an election time. Interesting. For those that are elected. Fortunately, that
Wait.
is not me right now. I'm not up for reelection, but am I correct? It is during that time
So-
frame?
Excuse me, what day is election day? Okay.
5th.
So that's, the first notice was on the 6th of November that we have some room flexibility in that, but we chose the 6th for the first published day.
Oh, I'm so glad that doesn't look suspicious. I'm glad it was by happenstance. Director Schneider, you had a question or comment?
Just, we just increased our salaries since 1999, I believe, and we got not one piece of public comment on it. And we have a very weird election and just appointed people. So it does not seem to be an issue amongst my 23,000 residents, just as a something. And it's all happening at the same time, so.
Okay. So we don't have to worry about Millbrae coming out with pitchforks? Okay. Okay. Well, that's 1 out of 26. Are there any other questions or comments about this? So if I understand right, what we would be taking a motion on is the recommended action with the changes and with the crossouts and all that.
Yes.
I want to make certain I'm clear to the board. Okay. Director Schneider, you still have a question? Is there anyone else that has a question? Anyone in the public? I do not see anyone. Do I have a motion? Director Schneider.
Would you like me to read the? I make a motion that the board policy committee recommend that the board hold a notice public hearing in order to adopt the ordinance number 2024-01 at the next available meeting, increasing compensation to $200 a day for attending meetings and each day of service by request of the board, and require review of board member compensation on a 5-year interval.
Thank you. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
I have a question on this motion.
Okay,
It says that
we don't have a motion till I have a second.
You do have a second.
You had a second.
Oh, was that
I
Barbara?
seconded from the ether.
My question
I'm
is.
sorry you got caught in the ether.
My question is, this motion says recommend that the board hold a notice public hearing. Does that mean we're giving staff, I thought we should give explicitly direction to the staff to notice the hearing prior to the hearing? Because, we need to have the authority to do that because the board's not going to be able to.
Well, this is to recommend that we follow the direction legally of what we have to do to have a public hearing
Okay, is that okay?
over
Counsel?
compensation.
This is sufficient.
That's sufficient.
Okay. Yeah, I was worried about the same thing. That's why I ask all my questions. All right, so I have a motion and I have a second from the ether. Sorry about that, Barbara. Director Pierce. Any questions? Anyone from the public? Okay, we'll call the question.
Hardy,
Yes.
Ragsdale,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes,
Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Pierce.
Yeah,
Thank you. Schneider,
Yes.
Vella,
Yes.
Sichterman, and the motion passes.
Thank you. Now, I will say, I did not mean to go fast because this is a lot of heavy, important stuff. And I was worried that we may have to go past the CEO reports. I will say, I should have said it at the beginning, we did cancel the closed session because there is nothing new. So, as I always love to quote Princess Bride, we know nothing, now you are caught up. So that part has been canceled, so we have plenty of time for our CEO reports, and we have some interesting information.
Yes, so I actually have them in here in the opposite order. So we're going to start with the Bay Delta Plan update. This is, I believe, exactly the same slide that you saw a few weeks ago at the board meeting. So there is no substantive updates as far as timelines going on between phase 1 and phase 2, though we do hear that internally within the state board staff, they're continuing to do the necessary work to meet these timelines. So that is good news, but there's nothing further to update beyond that. My next report is further developments on a project that we have been involved in for a long time now with our regional partners, with Contra Costa Water District, San Francisco, and others. This is on the Los Vaqueros Reservoir Expansion Project, which is, as I said, a regional project designed to both improve the Bay Area water supply reliability, water quality, and also provide ecosystem benefits. This project has been heavily supported by the state and the federal governments. Those funds have been really to support the ecosystem benefits, and it would increase the existing Los Vaqueros reservoir capacity, which is a reservoir that's owned and operated right now just for Contra Costa Water District, as well as it was envisioned to have a new regional intertie called the Transfer Bethany Pipeline and some improved pump stations. Obviously, Contra Costa Water District is a central figure because they own this project, and all the other associated facilities as well lie within their service area. Just to give you a sense of the scope of the beneficiaries, this is a map of the beneficiaries, a very diverse coalition of kind of your regular water districts, Alameda County Water District, Contra Costa East Bay Mud, Santa Clara, and others. But also we've got the Grasslands Water District, which was a huge beneficiary of the idea of these ecosystem benefits. BAWSCA is not a partner to the Joint Powers Authority at this time for the Los Vaqueros expansion project, but the idea had been that we would receive benefits through our wholesale relationship with San Francisco, and we have been actively involved in the discussions. The day before your last meeting, at the Contra Costa's board's meeting on September 18th, they directed their general manager to develop an approach to end Contra Costa's participation in the project. They made this request based on the conclusion of facts shown that the project, from their perspective, was no longer viable, both from a yield, the water supply yield that they expected to get out of it, as well as the business case, the cost case for the project. Obviously, this was a significant announcement and unexpected at the time, and pretty devastating to the other Joint Powers Authority partners, to be sure. The JPA has expressed its desire for continued interest in the project, and trying to figure out if there's anything more there with the agreements and to address Contra Costa's concerns. Is unclear to me if that's going to be possible at this point, though everybody is seeking to look through the various options to see if there is something there. The JPA is actually meeting today while you're meeting, so there may be some further developments after their meeting today, but it does not look good. So what's going on right now is the general manager of Contra Costa is developing basically an unwind plan, how to end this project and how to address archiving the work. Also about, we have spent a portion of the state's funding on the project design efforts, and, does that have to be returned, or what do we have to do with that? And we will continue to keep you informed as this item develops. I think as we continue to go through this, one of my thoughts is that this is very telling. It's another experience that we have with regional projects, large regional projects, and what causes them to work or to not work. And we've known from the very beginning that the issue with the Los Vaqueros expansion project was not the technical capability. It wasn't the environmental acceptability. It was approved. It had CEQA approval. It was these institutional arrangements to provide significant protections to all parties, and that is where it fell down. And that is incredibly unfortunate. So with that concludes my report.
Thank you. Obviously, reading up on this was eye-opening. Basically, when I heard about this, it came down to risk, was my understanding. And I was unclear. I understand some of the state funding has been expended. There was 172 from the feds. I was curious if we know where that will go or what will happen. And San Francisco, I was curious how much they had put out, and if that was driving up our rates because of that, or was that something San Francisco took on because we were not direct to that. And also my understanding was it was a shovels-ready project, and that CEQA process that you mentioned, will that still stand if for any reason this becomes resurrected?
So let's start with the end first. Yes, the project was essentially shovel ready. The CEQA had been approved. The majority of the design was approved. My understanding is that can sit and wait and continue to be valid, assuming the project continues to live within the structure of that approval, meaning like the environmental impacts that you would expect, or you can otherwise point to that and say it'll have nothing further than what you otherwise had analyzed. So that's the easier part. As far as monies that have been spent to date on the project, there's been total from the local project participants, so not from the state, of $31.5 million spent by all the parties together. Within that, actually BAWSCA was a separate participant for a few years when it first started out, and we spent roughly $300,000 in that independent participation. That was in some of the very early years and the board made a decision not to continue as a direct participant. San Francisco's costs have been equivalent to the other major partners. That's $4.4 million. And like all things, you get to pay your fair share of those costs. So you have paid roughly 2/3 of that cost. And I guess, you know, in some ways, and I do think it's important, you know, it could be easy to say that that's wasted money, but this project is among a number of projects that we have to continue through the planning process to push and try to get developed to meet our needs. And we know with all of them, not all of them will make it. And unfortunately, this is the one that didn't. I am interested in trying to salvage out of it and those expenditures everything we can, right? How do we use this to leverage the next project, right? What information can be gained? I do intend to ask Mr. Ritchie if, you know, his team can do a more formal write-up of, like, you know, what are the lessons we want to learn from this that can help us inform our further planning? And is there something else more there, right? That makes it worth it. That gives us something to use from this. And I think, as others have said, projects don't die like this either. And so it may come back. I've been working on the Los Vaqueros Reservoir project for my entire career, so that's 34 years. I was involved at East Bay Mud when it didn't exist, when they came to East Bay Mud for the first time and said, hey, do you want to partner with us? And the two agencies would not talk to each other. And so the general manager sent me over because their general manager wouldn't scream at an underling. And then I was involved with the first expansion, and then when everybody said they didn't want to participate, and so Contra Costa went by themselves. And we've been involved on this project as well. So, you know, this is the way these things tend to go, unfortunately.
Thank you. My daughter has a wonderful line. What did we learn?
Exactly.
And I think that's what we're going to have to take away from this. The fact that it's shovel ready. Maybe someday the shovels will be ready. Thank you. Director Vila.
So a quick question to the CEO. So from the history of this project, would you consider that this is the first time that it has kind of went really dormant at this point? Or, because you said it's been going on for all this time, you know, maybe it was going on a little bit faster at times or slower at times, but is it dead and has to be revived again? Because we know that it will probably get revived again at some point.
You know, thinking back,
In other words, is it the most dead you've seen it?
Well, it's so, you know, the question is it dead regionally, right? So when Contra Costa built it, the decision, they pretty quickly pivoted when East Bay Mud wasn't going to participate, and they said, great, we're going to do it ourselves. And they built the project, and they became very insular in the project, and it was their project, and they were building it. Thank you very much. And they didn't really want to talk to anybody about it. So there was a period there in which there was no further conversations about partnerships in anything. And then the discussion happened, well, we think we might want to raise it. Maybe we need to look for some partners. And so it started again, right? After that first raise, almost immediately, pretty quickly thereafter, the state came up and said, I think there's money to be had. It became a project that looked viable. Like most dam projects in the state of California, there's a broad range of sizing, right, that it can be fit for. And so this is kind of what ends up happening with these projects. So I don't know if it's as dead as it's ever been, but I do think the actions of the Contra Costa Board are very definitive.
To quote my favorite movie again, it's been mostly dead all day. Reality. Nicole, I wondered, Ms. Sandkulla, if you wanted the policy board committee calendar that was at the end, that was part of your reports. I didn't know if you wanted.
I have nothing further to report unless there's a question on the calendar. This is just giving you a snapshot of the things that are coming before you in the balance of this fiscal year. So.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And to recognize, I always joke, I learned something new going through the correspondence. Did not realize, I know about fiscal years, but I did not know the water year starts on October 1st. So we decided to start our water year with a heat wave. Does not bode well, but we're hoping for better. Well, I want to know who's in charge and who's going to do something about it. Yes.
That's a water year.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Because there was nothing new information-wise, we canceled the closed session, so we do not need the closed session or the report. But are there any comments by committee members or any announcements or anything you want to make us aware of? Yes. Director Schneider, please.
Question. I know we cut a few things out of the work plan, and I cannot remember, I apologize, on the work for landscape alternatives. And when I've talked to the staff of Millbrae, they've been waiting to hear from BAWSCA about the sprinkler, the thing that we hold on to, the handle. Long council meeting last night. And other water conservation things we seem to be out of in our city. Are we bringing that program back? And that's the first part of my question. Or has my city missed something?
I am not aware. We haven't had a program for a faucet nozzle, I guess, or
Nozzle, there we go.
hose nozzle
Yeah, that's it.
for some time. We used to have one that was for commercial kitchens.
Okay.
That, was an off and on in those commercial kitchens, but we haven't had one for landscaping for some time. But what I would recommend, if your staff could reach out to Kyle Ramey, he's really our best person to talk to about the conservation programs, and certainly any insight into future conservation programs that they might be interested in.
Part two of that, and I know we're water, but at my local level, water and stormwater and what happens with flooding is an issue. So in my last few months on council, I will be pushing for more of our landscapes to include more bioswales to keep water on site. And I happened to be at a meeting in Menlo Park at their new community center and saw what they did on the roads behind Meta. Mm-hmm. They basically carved out within the street, and they have a bioswale and brand new sidewalks. They also got $40 million from Meta to build their community center. Woohoo. I mean, it was beautiful. Were you there, Leslie? It's gorgeous, and I'm so happy for them. But I wonder if BAWSCA, and I know that this is totally not water supply, has any work within the teachers that you put together, that we put together for the courses that are taught out there, that could help us get our residents or our businesses to be thinking more along the line of keeping stormwater on site. And if it doesn't fit, I understand it. It's just on my wish list.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that suggestion, and we can take that back and talk with our educators. Certainly, it fits within the realm of work that they would otherwise address with the, WaterWise at the Long Be Gone program, where you're taking things out. I mean, there is a major component of that, is making sure we have permeable escape, and there's possibility that we can find someone that might have that kind of design experience and offer that class. So.
That would be super cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will say that the dry riverbed idea is one that I've seen incorporated, and not only does BAWSCA have really good things on the website, and I have sent students to that when they're doing community concern type projects, but Valley Water also does.
Okay.
And I know a lot of cities, my city does, connects to all those and even has more information.
Yeah, I think the unique thing was really cutting into the curb. And this was a total redesign, a rebuild on that, but how to retrofit all of our existing curbs into those of us that have parking strips, et cetera, et cetera. And I've been looking for samples. South City's redoing their El Camino, so it's on El Camino. And there's certain issues with drainage, but it just was a really cool thing to see, and plans, teachers that can do that are always helpful, but thank you.
And if I might, another resource might be the county stormwater group through CCAG. I know that they have been the ones that have led the way in my own neighborhood in actuality doing with that, with new developments and redevelopment of areas. So that's another resource.
Wonderful. And I think that's a good segue into saying, during a flood, plan for a drought. During a drought, plan for a flood. And that's how I was raised, so that you are never caught unawares with water. So I appreciate that. So we will adjourn to our, if I don't see any other committee comments, we'll adjourn to our next meeting, which will be December 11th at 1:30. And this meeting is adjourned. They gave me an actual gavel.